Okay, so we're going to set up a campaign. So first and foremost, what's your email going to be about?
Fall foliage.
Fall foliage. Okay. So step number one is you create a campaign. So do my mouse again. We're going to go to campaign, and we're going to create a new campaign. We're going to not make it. We can eventually split test it later. Actually, you have two subject lines, right? So let's split test it now.
What's the RSS driven mean?
I don't know. It must pull it in from somehow from an API or something and send it out. So maybe
It's
if you're
ongoing.
probably if you're blogging or something, it'll probably send it out.
Sorry.
I have to admit I've never used that. No, it's totally fine. So we're going to split test subject lines. And so split test means you're going to compare one group to another group, and whichever group does better, right, in this case, whoever has a better open rate, everyone else will get that email, right? The whole point of you're testing your subject lines to see which has more impact. And you can drag and drop the changes however you want. So you can set it to 10% and 10%, and then the 80% the rest. If you don't find like that's right, you can obviously move it up or down. There's no hard rules here for what you should split your audience at. I think you should have enough. I use the +1 rule, which is if adding one person to either result, for example, let's say there was 100 people, and you send it to 10 and 10, and 5 open one and 3 open the other, so it's a 50% open rate and a 30% open rate. If you add one to either side, that number is going to change really dramatically, right? It'll be 60% or 20%. So if adding one changes your percentages dramatically, it means you don't have a big enough group to be statistically significant, right? We're not being scientific about it, but just as a rule of thumb, it should be one person added on one way or another shouldn't have a dramatic impact. So whatever it can be, for 1,000 people, this means it'll be 100 and 100, right? Going from 50 to 51 or 49 to 48, that's not going to dramatically impact it. So for us, 20% is fine. How should a winner be chosen, right? We're going to say by open rate, and it can go for a day, or you can say it doesn't matter. We'll say for an hour.
Yes.
Great. So these are the lists. The number one rule I recommend for using any of these services is have one list that you then segment based on different criteria, right? It's really, really hard to maintain multiple lists unless you're dealing with millions of people, and even then, trying to maintain multiple lists, and some person will appear on one list and not another list, and then it gets really confusing. Have one list, which is all of your customers, all the donors, whatever it happens to be, and then using criteria, you can say what they are. But we're going to check in on criteria in a minute. So anyway, we're going to email, I imagine, these people. And do you want to send it to everyone, or are we sending it to a segment? Okay, we'll send it to everyone. Let's say we didn't want to send it to everyone. We could send it to a segment. And then here, this is why I recommend putting in all that relevant criteria. Is it too small? I can try to make it a little bit bigger.
Green.
Is there a button somewhere that makes this bigger? I forget how to do it. Oh, I think I need a view. Zoom. How's that? Is that big enough, or should I make it bigger? One more bigger. One more? How's that? Okay, cool. So for example, you can preset segments if you want, right? And I think you already have some segments, so people came from Shopify, people came from Fab, and so forth. If you're going to be sending it to the same people over and over and over again, you have it set up. For example, if you have your whole list, then it's split into donors and clients, for example, and you can have all the donors as a preset list. But for the time being, I often find that you can make it up as you go along. So for example, what's something that you'll have information on that we could split by, or segment by? I'm sorry. Do you have birthdays in here?
No,
Okay, let's just say you did, for example, right? You could say this is going to be a birthday email, and everyone whose birthday is in the month of February gets something, 10% off, an extra pair of socks, whatever it is. So you can say birthday month is February, right? Or whatever you want it to be, and it'll pull out. But let's use a condition that you actually have. What in here is filled out? Address. So we could say address contains New York, right? And then we can refresh the account, and so two people will get this email. So maybe not an email we want to send, but depending on whatever segment you want it to be. But you can see here, do you have all this information filled out? Probably not, right? So this is a really good opportunity. You could say, well, maybe language is not that relevant. So let's get rid of language. But sign-up source, is this where you put in fab, for example? Yeah, so this is a really good example. So we could say fab, oh, they're not giving, it's not a generic thing.
How do you pull in all the information? Like how do you get all that?
Well, the two main ways are by hand and by API.
Okay.
By hand means you type it in, or someone does, and by an API means when things get added. For example, you could put a form from Mailchimp on your website.
Yeah, we have that.
Let's take a look for a second. Is it on the home page or is it somewhere else?
If you scroll down.
Here, perfect. So if I put in my email address here right now, this will fire it off to Mailchimp, right? And then in theory, where'd it go? Here, I don't know exactly where you're putting it. It's probably not in sign-up source. Oh no, it could be here. I'm not sure exactly how yours is set up. But in here somewhere, maybe let's see if that works. Okay, cool. So this is probably it, right? This is a sign-up form that's on your site. So now whenever someone signs up, they either signed up from the form or they didn't, right? It's kind of binary, and so you'll be able to pull in by that. But and this is why it's so important to think ahead of time. What are the relevant criteria I need to know about all my list? Because you're going to want to segment based on that if you're doing something like a birthday or you want to only donors or whatever it happens to be. But for the purposes of this email, we're sending it to everybody, right? Because remind me what it was again? Fall foliage.
Can I just ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So then would you add more criteria on the actual homepage and you use the email birthday?
Exactly.
How do you then get that?
Yes, you'll need to request it. Okay, that's the short answer. The longer answer is you maybe don't want to put it on the homepage. Maybe you get their email and then later on you ask them for it, right? Which is better practices. Usually when you grab someone's email, you make it very short, only the critical information. So it might just be email. And then later on when they're, for example, let's say they come back and purchase or donate or interact with you in some way, you can say, by the way, if you let us know when your birthday is, we'll give you something in exchange for that. And yes, and that's the other way is you can scrape it. And scraping means if it's publicly available, Mailchimp has a service, if you use Mailchimp, which will go and try to scrape information from different places. Which means if it's publicly available, they'll, for example, they'll match their email address with their LinkedIn profile or with their Facebook profile or whatever it happens to be to try to grab their birthday. For the time being, we're going to send it to everyone. Now we get into the heart of it. So the campaign name, this is just for your own purposes, we'll call it Fall Foliage. So here are the two subject lines. Can you give me what your two subject lines are?
New month, new style.
New month, new style.
The second one is out in the video.
Good. So these are the two subject lines that we're going to be testing against each other, and we're going to see which one does better, right? Which one has better open rate. I assume it's just from Zora. So you can change the name to be whatever you want it to be. And then this is where they're going to reply to. Anyway, we're not going to go through every single little, there's millions and millions of fields. We're not going to go through all of them. We're just trying to get the idea. This is a...
Sorry, can you just speak for a second about the from field?
Yeah.
This is like a conversation we have internally sometimes of
Sure.
whether it should be from the company or just from like a guy, you know what I mean? Like from me.
Yeah,
Which
so
I feel is kind of
best practices to test,
shady.
as
Okay,
always to
yeah,
test.
okay.
For example, instead of splitting along the subject line, you can split along the from name.
Yeah.
So send the same exact, and this is sort of best practices for testing is change one thing at a time.
Right.
So let's say you're going to send an email to 1,000 people, 100 of them get from you, and 100 of them get from the company, and see which one does better. Often, depending on the content, it'll change.
But there's nothing like it's considered weird to like send it from yourself or something. You know
No,
what I mean?
in fact, it's frequently, nothing is hard and fast rule, of course, but especially in sales, it's often better to come from a human being.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. I just didn't know if it was like deceptive or something.
No, not deceptive at all. A lot of people, for example, you could write Eric Morrow at Sora or something. But the best answer is always to test.
Thank you.
Key here, tracking. Here you go, Google Analytics. Throw that into your Google Analytics. If you, I assume it's linked. I don't know if it is, but you link Mailchimp to Google Analytics, and now we'll talk about Google Analytics this afternoon, you'll be able to go in and see the campaign with this name here. So if let's say the goal is you want people to buy stocks, right? You'll be able to go in and look at this campaign, which could be compared to lots of other campaigns, and see how well it did in selling socks. Right? So remember, the goal might be to have people open the email, but the real goal is to get them to buy things or to get them to do whatever it is that you want them to do. And having this linked into Google Analytics will really help you with that. So this is very, very important. And there's lots and lots of other things that we're not going to deal with, but that's the main one. Remember how I said you shouldn't auto-tweet things because you want to be a human being? I never use this for that very reason. Right? I hate auto-twittering, auto-Facebooking, all that kind of stuff. I don't use it, never use it. But this is fine.
What does that mean?
Facebook comments, it means that they can, inside the email, they can comment to Facebook somehow. I don't know how, but it works. They
It's
can,
on your page, not responding.
yeah. No, they can't. Responding to the email will just reply.
No, I mean, like, it won't go to.
No, it won't go to Facebook.
I think if you do that, I think it posts to your Facebook wall.
Yeah.
Does it? Auto post it?
Yeah, your
Oh.
Facebook page wall.
So then, yeah, I would turn that off too. I don't know if that's new or not. When I've used this in the past, you were able to somehow comment it to Facebook, like with a share. So when you commented and then shared it to your own Facebook page. But I wouldn't recommend auto posting it. If it's important to go enough, if it's important enough to go on your Facebook page or on your Twitter page, it's important enough for you to write something specifically for it. Now, if you're gonna, yeah, does that make sense? I mean, it can fit into your workflow, but I don't want you to think about it as an automatic step, right? If it's important enough, write it out carefully, because we're going to do an exercise that in a minute. Okay, so now we have our subject lines, right? And we have that we're going to split test, and we have who it's going to and all the rest of it. Do you guys have a template that you use?
No, we usually, I usually design it and then we kind of put it in.
So you don't have one. So is there anything on Mailchimp already?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it this?
it's something from I mean, you could just.
Uh,
Might be something from your previous campaign.
yeah. To use a previous campaign, we would have had to copy it from the beginning, or yeah. If you don't have it already set up here, well, let's see. Maybe under my templates, let's see what you've used. Have you used this? That looks familiar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's use that for now. We're not going to send it, so it's not a big deal. No worries. So this is now, you can see the sort of little boxes, so you can change anything inside these little boxes. First of all, if you're just getting started, you can use Mailchimp templates. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll pull your colors and all the rest of it. If you're going to start using email more regularly, I recommend investing in one of our awesome graphic designers that are here and getting them to make, for example, and they'll make you a Mailchimp template, which you could then throw your content into every single time. So I am not a designer, and I have no eye for design at all, but that's what I do. Whenever I set up a mail campaign for somebody, if they don't already have templates, I grab a graphic designer, and pay them to design a template that you can use over and over again that matches your website and all the rest of it. But we're not going to talk about design because it's way outside my expertise. But nevertheless, let's talk about what content's going to go in here. So expired socks is not going to be it. It's going to be fall foliage, right? We can change out the image, but for now we'll just keep it. This looks a little bit more springy, but it doesn't really matter. And then we haven't written any emails yet, and we're not going to do it in class today, but then all your text will go in here, and at the bottom there should be a call to action, which we don't have here, right? So what you want to do, just as an example, is, for example, come check out our collection, right?
Match it on the bottom versus the top.
It doesn't, wherever you think. I think best practice is to put a link at the top and put a box at the bottom, right? So you can put in a box with Mailchimp if you want to, where it'll be like a button that you can click on. You can do links. Ultimately, your audience will determine how they like to do it. When I personally send emails, for example, the email you get from me will just be links, right? Because they go to other websites. It's clear. I'm not asking you to buy things, but often it helps to have a reserve now, or buy your ticket here, or something that's pretty obvious. So you can also see, I think that's pretty standard. A lot of people have more than one place. But then you would, for example, you can make this a link, right? And it would go to whatever it is that it needs to go to, right? So, for example. Okay? And what's nice about using Mailchimp is that this will automatically get something called query strings, so it'll track it in Google Analytics. You'll see how many people opened this up. All right, let's save that. So you put all your text in there, you have everything ready to go. And then we'll go next. Right? Not everyone gets fancy HTML emails. They often get, if they're reading it on a super old browser, or I mean, who knows, for whatever reason, they might, or maybe their mail blocked you for whatever reason. It's good to have this, and you can just click this button here. It's super easy, and it copies it everything. Right? So now you have your plain text in case people don't get it, and now you're all set. So you can schedule or send now. Usually scheduling is, unless you're sending it right now, but you can see here it has all the different things that are going on. Most importantly for us, the 2 different subject lines. This is Mailchimp adding its own thing, and that's it. That's how we would send it out. That make sense? Any questions on that?
When do you think the best time to send that is?
I think the best time to send it is when your people open them, which is you should test it. So you can split tests based on different times. There's no hard and fast rule. It depends on your market. Some things like for socks, maybe it's good at 4:30 in the afternoon when people are kind of burned out from work. You can go online and Google it. People will give you all sorts of crazy answers. And the ultimate answer is just when your people will be interested. One important thing, especially if you're working across time zones, Mailchimp free won't give you this, but if you pay for Mailchimp, you can. I guess you have a free account. Yeah. Does anyone have a paid account? Remember what it's called? I'm blanking on the name right now. But whatever it is, it'll send it out, for example, at 9 a.m. local, right? Which you can't do with Mailchimp free. Scheduling is what it is? Yeah. So it'll schedule it differently for where people are actually geographically located, which if you're in different time zones can be very helpful. And that's it.
I have another question
Yes.
related to getting the information. So is all this information stored in Mailchimp, or is there a separate CRM? Like,
Yes. So there's a lot of people use Mailchimp essentially as their CRM is a customer relationship management tool. Salesforce being probably the most well-known. And that's what, remember when we were talking about who goes on your list and what information you need to know about them? That's a CRM. And Mailchimp provides you a very lightweight one. So let's take a quick look at, here's our list. Right, that's what all this information is. Their emails, names, and then so forth, all the other things that we want. If you don't need these, I would recommend deleting them, right, and put in the things that are relevant to your company. How you get that information is the easiest way is to ask for it, right? So imagine you're shipping something to someone, you'll ask them for their address, and then you'll throw it into CRM. We're not going to talk about it today, but essentially Mailchimp integrates into everything under the sun. So if you use Salesforce as your CRM or use whatever as your CRM, all that information can get pulled into Mailchimp and pulled out of Mailchimp too.
Could you just use this as your CRM?
Yes, if you have very lightweight CRM needs, then Mailchimp works great, right? Because it's free and it works really well as a way. The reason most people use Salesforce is it allows you to keep track of your clients in a way that you can see what stage they're at, right? Are they brand new to my company? Are they learning more about my company? Are they someone who I've worked with already, right? But you can add these as segments, but Salesforce is really good with adding nodes and automating things. But as a lightweight CRM, this works perfectly fine.
What about, so like you don't always send emails to your customers in Mailchimp, you can do it through like Google Apps or whatever, right?
Sure.
How exactly?
If you're going to send emails to your customers, I recommend always doing it through Mailchimp.
Oh, you can do individual ones?
Well, then it starts getting a little
Well, that's what I
hassless.
mean, like when you talk to your customers, sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I want to do
Right. So then so what's the question?
Like, how do you capture all that information, or how do you remember?
Okay, so this would be what Salesforce is great for. Salesforce will keep a running log of everything you send. So you could, for example, plug in Gmail and plug in Mailchimp both into Salesforce. And so let's say Brian Ramoser was on there. You get brought in when you open up Salesforce, which is not the code. Unfortunately, we're not talking about today. But when you open up Salesforce, it would have all his contact information, all the details, and underneath it would have a running log. Emailed on this day, responded on this day, got a letter from Mailchimp, logged into the website, all the different things. And that's called digital body language, so you know everything that they're doing related to your digital properties. Does that make sense? But that's very robust and probably not necessary for most of what you guys are doing. But if you're interested in something like that, just shoot me an email, and we can talk to GA about putting together a more robust class on that kind of thing. But it's usually more than what people need. Good question?
Yeah. Where do you get the AB split? I also have one.
Yeah, you get the A/B split when you first set up a campaign. When you click on Create Campaign, it's right here, A/B split. And you can A/B split anything in Mailchimp, but if you use their sort of predetermined tool, you can only split on subject line, name, and time, day, right? By using, you can go actually, well, essentially what you do is you put in 2 blocks of HTML into the email, and it'll split tests along that. So if you want to test different copy in your email, for example, or different pictures in your email, whatever it happens to be, you can split along essentially any line that you want. It just Mailchimp gives you a super easy tool for the things that are most commonly split tested.
What's a decent open rate?
Depends on your demographic and depends on your audience, depends on your business. So the decent is just test against. What you do is your first email will be your baseline, and you're going to try to move it up from there. But just to show you how wide a range it could be, when I send an email to class after class, it gets about 100% open rate, right? Not surprisingly, there's only 30, like usually less than 30 of you guys, and we just spend a bunch of time together, and it's going to be something that's highly, highly relevant. So not surprisingly, people open it. If it's full foliage, do you mind if we look at your open rates? Let's see, if we go to reports.
Mailchimp also has it by industry. They'll tell you where you are.
Yeah, because since there's so many people using Mailchimp and you have to self-report your industry, it'll kind of give you a sense. But here we go. We can get a sense of what the open rates are. So here was 40, and then I'm not sure what happened here. This one didn't go so well or something. More recently, it was, right? So if someone showed me this, knowing nothing else, I would say this is probably a smaller list of highly curated people. Because, I mean, 25 to 50% open rates is really, really good, right? So, but what we're finding out here is that this is highly relevant. The click-through rates, I would probably usually between 1 and 2%. So since this is 3 or 4 times that, it's something the message is resonating. But remember, this wouldn't be now you can go home and say, well, I got 51% and 7%, party over, right? It's all relevant to your list. So next time we're going to say, how can we make that 7%, 8%, right? What's more relevant to my audience? The way you do that is by split testing. We're going to talk about that. This is happening. Any other questions? Depending on where you are, if you're brand new to it, don't freak out. Its best thing to do is just get started, start sending some emails. Don't worry so much about split testing and all the rest of it. Just start getting a feel for it, seeing what your open rates are, and then start testing different different subject lines. But just follow the practices. Get a good subject line, have a call to action, copy, nice, short, and sweet. We're about to talk about that right now, all the different pieces of that. But just get started. As you get more and more into it, there's plenty of robust tools that Mailchimp provides you so that you can plug it into analytics and get better results from your campaigns.
So maybe you'll help us with this later on, but how do you go about creating like a kind of a strategy where you're only have X amount of time, right?
True.
And to effectively allocate your time where you can have the most bang for your
Right.
time in a way.
Yep.
Because there's all these tools, and it's just sort of like.
I'll just give you a very quick example. Spending 4 hours coming up with 8 different ways of creating subject lines, probably not going to be that relevant, right? If you have millions and millions of people and you're trying to finally dissect your message, maybe so, right? But if you're trying to reach to 1,000 people, if you wrote fall foliage or new socks or whatever, it's probably not going to dramatically change it. So then you're going to want to spend your efforts more on making sure you have the best socks available, right? So that's going to be whatever is in your customer's best interest is going to be your guideline.
But then at the same time, like trying to, I guess for me, obviously the big goal is trying to grow that customer base.
Right. So the last exercise we do today is going to be about how we're going to split up our time. So we'll definitely talk about it. Okay.